Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the Junkyard Crawl with assistance from our friends at High Octane Classics in Auburn, Mass. Thank you very much. 1965 was the second year for Chevrolet's mid-sized Chevelle / Malibu platform, the A-body. This one here is an SS. We see the convertible top, the SS logo right here. Now keep in mind, 1965 saw 81,112 Super Sports built in 1965, of course, on the SS platform. All of them had bucket seats. All of them had consoles in the middle, but did every single one have a V8? We'll find out in a moment. But in the meantime, we can see here, this clearly is a mid-size car. Again, this is body-on-frame construction, which Chevrolet adopted from their full-size car. So it has the ride and quietness of a full-sizer, but with a smaller platform. 5-lug wheels, and of course, coil springs at the back of Chevelle, as they also are on the front. Now, of course, the convertible top, very different from the hardtop area in the back. The wheelhouse is very different, so the top stack can go down inside and hide under a snap-on tonneau cover. But again, this car, the top frame is still here. We can see the little staples put in there by Fisher Body as this thing was assembled way back when. And of course, these would have made their route from Fisher Body to the assembly plant by train for final assembly. Now, the Super Sport, of course, was Chevrolet's muscle model, I guess. But remember, too, we often today think of SS Chevelles as 396s, 454s, but they weren't always muscle cars. Now, we got to remember, 65 was the year of the Z16 Chevelle, which had a 396, but only 201 were made. We'll get to the engine on this one in a second. Now, these have a large trunk. You can see the extra glitz and trim on the Super Sport. Would have been a Super Sport logo here. Somehow along the way it's been missed or gone. There would have been a blacked out paint effect too in this area here, which would have identified these from the rear as being Super Sports. The trunk was very large, plenty of room for all kinds of cargo. Again, body on frame construction. And here is the body by Fisher rocker plate, and of course Fisher Brothers were early on horse and carriage makers. Billy Durant bought up the Fisher company. The brothers stayed on as management and presidents, became very wealthy. The Fisher building in downtown Detroit is a work of art, 3 towers, not 4. Apparently it was never really finished properly, but anyway, the Fisher Brothers is what Fisher Body is all about. Now, this is Car Life magazine, March of '64. Now, this is when the Chevelle was the big news. Of course, this says 65, so the debut, El Camino. Here's the Malibu right there. Let's take a peek at this test. And inside of this, they're giving the world its first look at the new Chevelle, the different bodies available. Here's the 2-door hardtop, the 4-door sedan, the workman-like piece, and then for real work, the El Camino. And here we have, the frame consists of a pair of full-length side rails joined laterally by 3 cross members which form part of the structure. Side rails are of heavy gauge C-section construction with welded-in torque boxes at the rear kickup and between the passenger and engine compartment. On the convertibles like this, and the sedan pickups, the El Camino, another C-section is welded over the usually open inner side of the rails to provide greater beam strength. Side rails are located just inside the body. So indeed, the El Camino and the convertible came with a frame that had a box section. This is an open type on a hardtop, but again, that would be a box section there. These frames weigh 100 pounds more on the convertibles and El Caminos than they would on a regular hardtop or sedan. So again, there's going to be a boxed frame under this thing. It's probably long gone. But let's get back into the idea of the engine on this one here. So we come up this side, and 64 and 5 were the 2 years that Super Sport made or meant standard bucket seats, sporty stuff in the early 60s, a standard console. But here, what's up with this? This is a column shifted 3-speed right there. There's a clutch pedal down there. This is a 3 on the tree. What? Yes, you could get the 3-speed manual in a Super Sport. They weren't all console shifted cars. You could pay for that if you wanted, but this is a base car. And check this out. The VIN tells us an awful lot right here. 137 tells us this car was born a 6-cylinder Super Sport. And there were 2 engines, the 194, or for an extra $40, the 230 cubic inch 6. Now, B, of course, means Baltimore, Maryland, which is where this was final assembled. They weren't all done in Flint or Warren, Michigan. So again, Baltimore was one of several plants that finished out the Chevelles and the Malibus for Chevrolet. So kind of weird. This was a 6-cylinder, 3-speed manual, Super Sport, which is a contradiction in terms. For the most part, the 6-bangers and 3-speed manuals are for grandpa's sedan, you know, or maybe an El Camino, something that was more workmanlike. But as we come around to the front of this one, we can learn more. In fact, Shane, you go that way because the cowl tag is on the driver's side on these things. And there we can explore further. Yeah, it's going to be kind of tough, but right around here, maybe we'll do this on B-roll, but if you face in this way, we can see here the cowl tag is a little bit different. It says 65, that's cool, 13867. Now this is something weird. 13867 is the code for a V8 SS convertible, which contradicts the 137 on the VIN. So this is either a swapped cowl tag, that rivet's factory, or that VIN was swapped, those welds are factory, or this is a factory blooper. But then again, you got to remember one thing too. This cowl tag came first. It was applied to this shell at Fisher Body, and all Fisher Body cared about was what the vehicle's bones were going to be. They weren't concerned with engines. So what Fisher Body saw was a 138, a Chevelle Super Sport. So they put the bucket seat mounts into the frame and the convertible body, etc. And when it went to the final assembly plant in Baltimore, that's when it got its final engine, the 6-cylinder that it was born with. So the 137 down there is probably the domineering data. But it just goes to show that you can be really confused in certain cases. Shane, come around this side if you would. And as you make your way, just paint this beautiful rusty old shell. And what a special car this must have been in its day. But again, with the 6-cylinder and 3-speed manual, it probably confused a lot of people into wondering if the Super Sport emblems were added. But we know that 137, it's a Super Sport, 6-cylinder, convertible. And here on the firewall, something kind of cool. We can see here, yellow grease pencil, an X, and gray. Okay, well that feeds into the paint code, which is W for Glacier Gray. And it wasn't uncommon for the folks at the plant to put a code here, or actually spell out red, white, whatever it might have been, in gray. So that's been there since 1965 when the guys in Baltimore built this thing. Kind of a neat thing. Now, of course, it also has a 1 for the trim, which means it had a white top. But again, Glacier Gray paint. We can see it inside the inner structures, the red oxide primer underneath. And again, an interesting car. But again, if we look at the floor on this thing, you won't see a hump for an automatic or a 4-speed manual. You'll see a flat, uninterrupted transmission tunnel, and this is a factory 3 on the tree. Now we get in 1966, and Chevelle Super Sport kind of grew up. They were always 396 big block powered, and they always had, again, big block power. You couldn't get a small block after 65 in an SS Chevelle. They were always 396s, which is cool. But again, you could get a 3-speed manual in those, or 4-speed, or the automatic as well. Now this is something kind of cool here. This next to the Chevelle is a Chevy Nova. See right here, Chevy Nova, it's upside down, but the junkyard can be a classroom. This gives us the opportunity to show some things that set the Nova apart from the Chevelle. The Chevelle's a midsize. The Biscayne, Impala, Bel Air were full size. The Nova was a compact. And as a result, 4 lug nuts on the Novas right here, up to you get to, I think, 64, 65 when the V8 came along, went to 5. But this is an early Nova, 62 or 3, with the 4 lug nut wheels. The little the Hotchkiss style rear axle right here, which has a dropout center. The center actually bolts into this pressed steel housing. This would change to a 10 bolt or a 12 bolt on certain later applications. So again, early Novas had 4 lugs. And the beauty of this thing right here, same basic stuff as found in a 56, 7, 8, 9 Corvette. And if you have a positive traction unit, you can plug it right into this or take it from this either way. Something kind of cool on display here is while the Chevelle had coil springs at the back, Novas had leaf springs, but not just any leaf spring. This is GM's patented monoplate. This is the leaf spring. There's no missing leaves on this thing. This is basically what was used at the back of the Nova to support the car. You can see the arch right there. And the idea behind monoplate, which GM patented, if we look at it, we'll see that it actually tapers. It's thickest at the middle. It gets thinner as you go to the ends on both sides. These are tuned to the weight and application of the car. And again, the monoplate, the idea here was cheap. One part does the job of many leaves, cheaper to make, lighter. And the only downside of these things, and I remember very well, my buddy John Kuchar, Had a 68 Nova, 6-cylinder car, power glide with these things in the back. We'd drive along, bang! And these things would fracture. They would begin to fatigue with time, they'd break, and then you were crawling. The good news was the rear axle was still located by the front half, but it was sort of just riding on the jounce and the rubberista. So you had to change the leaf springs, and I did that on the side of the road for my buddy John way back when. But these were classic for fracturing. And again, these monoplate springs were patented by Chevrolet and also used in Camaro and Firebird in '67. But again, the rubber boot, a little pad right here, helped to sort of isolate some of the vibration from it. But the beauty of the monoleaf was that, you know, in certain old days, there was a sense that the leaves could squeak, and you used to put grease between them, or gaiters, these big coverings full of grease in the old days, that is. But by the time you get into the mid-'60s, the sound of the leaves squeaking was alleviated by little plastic strips between them. But again, if you have a monoleaf in your Nova, it's original equipment in this period of time. Again, the Nova is also a unit construction car. We won't find any frame. There's no C-checks, there's no frame rails around this thing. And the leaf springs mount to these little boxes that are part of the floor. And you can see, of course, when rust sets in, everything gets loose. But this is the forward spring eye mount right here. So again, the Nova, similar to the Chevelle. If we come up here, we'll see the front clip on this thing. And here are the 4 lug drums on this one here, lightweight stuff. And again, on the Nova, 62 through 67, the entire front clip bolts on. This union right here, there's about 14 fasteners, 4 here, 3 and 3. Undo that, and this thing rolls away. So again, the Chevy Nova and the Chevelle were part of Chevrolet's diversification plan of the mid-'60s, wherein they had a car for every purse and purpose, from compacts to mid-size to full-size. And even super sports with a manual and a 6-banger for Grandpa, who didn't want that flashy V8 but wanted some style in his convertible. So if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel, and we'll be back tomorrow with more Junkyard Crawl.